Today, I'm bringing you more viral Dollar Tree DIY dupes from some high-end stores that you are going to love. My first project, I was actually inspired by these Pottery Barn shelves. I absolutely love these. They're not in the budget right now, and I thought that I could maybe recreate something kind of similar for my fragrances. So I went to Dollar Tree and I grabbed 6 of these Crafter Square wood trays. Now, these trays are obviously much smaller than the Pottery Barn shelves that you saw, but again, this is going to be something that's for my fragrances. So you could easily recreate this and use it for your knickknacks or your little special treasures, whatever you have. So I'm going to go ahead and just take my trays, and I'm really just kind of laying them out and figuring out the best placement for these. I am going to be gluing these all together to make sure that everything is nice and solid. And in doing that, I'm actually using some Surebonder wood glue. Well, I tried. I need to reload my gun here, but I am adding my Surebonder wood glue now to these trays. That way everything is nice and solid. I don't have to worry about these falling apart. Once I kind of added my glue onto everything and got these set up in the kind of formation that I wanted, I then started to stain these. Now, I'm going to be using this Minwax wood tint. It is a stain. It's a water-based stain that Minwax makes, and they make it in a variety of different colors. This is a walnut tinted stain, and what's great about this stain too is that it's a water base, so it's going to dry really fast, and it also cleans up really easily. So I'm just using this cloth. If you know me, you know I love antiquing wax. I didn't have enough antiquing wax to do this, so that's why I went with this gel stain. The cloth method is typically what I use whenever I do any kind of antiquing wax, but I'll be honest, the cloth was a little challenging to work with this round. It was absorbing a lot of the stain, and it just wasn't going as far as I wanted it to. So I grabbed one of my sponge brushes and just started working that stain all the way around. I did add a little bit more stain in there too. And literally just kind of worked it all the way around until I could have, I worked it around until I got everything covered. I can't talk this morning. And then I'm going to go ahead and take the just a smaller detail brush and just kind of fill in all the nooks and crannies and corners there that I missed. Now, this is what it looks like hanging on the wall. I just used some picture hanging kits from Dollar Tree and adhered them to the back, and this is what it looks like with my fragrances in it. Now, this is definitely sturdy. I strategically put 2 hangers on the back in 2 different areas. That way I had some good balance, and again, I love the way this looks. Project number 2, I'm going to the party section at Dollar Tree. I grabbed 1 package of the large and 1 package of the small silver and white plates. I also went to the home decor section and bought one of these candlesticks. Now, the plates are actually plastic. They are a hard plastic, and I want to make sure that they are still pretty sturdy. So I'm going to glue 2 of the large plates together, and then I'm going to glue 2 of the small plates together. Now, for the purpose of the video, and so I don't have to wait 24 hours for everything to dry, I am going to go ahead and just use some hot glue. If you wanted to use something else, you surely could use like an E6000 or even a super glue. I am perfectly fine with my Surebonder glue. I did add it also to the candlestick, as you can see here, and then I'm just going to place this down in the center of the large plate, and then I'm going to glue the small plate to the top of it. I'm sure a lot of us have made tiered trays before, so I think you know where I'm going with this, but I'm going to give you a little twist, I hope anyway. At least it's going to be a twist for me. So once everything was dry, I think you will agree that it's actually really pretty the way it is, but I am going to kick it up a notch and take it outside. I'm going to be spray painting it with this Terracotta spray paint. I love the effect that this gives, and I just love the idea of a terracotta tiered tray. Once everything was dried, I took it inside, and I am obsessed. I don't know, I think it almost has a cool, like, boho vibe to it. I wanted to style this as best as I could. I don't have a lot of, like, knick-knacky stuff right now, so I am just kind of using what I have on hand. But again, I'm super happy with this one. Next project, I am actually going to be doing a thrift flip for you, and I'm going to create an end table. And I was lucky enough when I went to Goodwill to find this metal table base. It reminds me of a luggage stand, and since I had this old vintage suitcase that was kind of in need of some TLC, I thought that this could be the perfect way to repurpose this suitcase. I also have some of these plumbing fixture things, I don't know what they're called, and a damp cloth that I'm going to use to wipe down my suitcase. Now, my cloth does have a little bit of all-purpose cleaner on it, and I'm not trying to get this brand new. I am just kind of knocking the dirt and the dust off of it. I love that original patina. I don't want to paint this. I am going to keep this just like it is. Now, for the base itself, I did take my suitcase and flip it upside down. You can see that the bottom of it is definitely seen some better days. And there is even some tape that's holding together some holes that are on the bottom. I don't want any critters to get in there. Now I'm going to take that plumbing hardware and just straddle where I'm going to be putting the legs. I marked it with a pencil, and then I drilled some pilot holes into the suitcase like so. I will say I didn't measure this as good as I should have, and I ended up having to go in and adjust the legs later on to make the table a little bit lower. So if you do create something like this, go ahead and measure it. I'm the king of eyeballing things sometimes, and sometimes it doesn't work, and this was a good example. So once I had those holes marked, I did just go ahead and screw everything down and made sure that everything was nice and secure. I put 2 of these metal clamps on each side of the legs, and then I did go back and add a 3rd and a 4th. So, well, no, I added a 5th and a 6th. So now I have 3 on each leg holding this onto the suitcase itself. Hopefully that made sense. I was even trying to figure out what I was saying as I was saying it. Once my table legs were secured, this is what the table looks like. I am so in love with this. This is exactly my style. This is perfect for my eclectic living room and my eclectic home in general. I have a house that's over 100 years old, and I don't know, there's just something really cool about the vibe that I've got going on in the house that just mixes the old and the new, and I really, really love this. And for my final project, I am going to be using one of these plant hangers from Dollar Tree. I also grabbed this welcome sign that I know is hard to see because of my shore bonder mat in the back there. And then I'm also grabbing this plastic bucket that I also picked up in the party section at Dollar Tree. I'm going to go ahead and take my wood burning tool and just kind of I guess burn a hole in the handles that you see on the champagne bucket there that I picked up at Dollar Tree. And all I'm going to do is literally just kind of apply a little bit of pressure. You can see that gun smoking. That sucker is hot. Make sure that you unplug it as soon as you are done with it. And it's a great way to do it. Now, I used that special terracotta spray paint once again on my champagne bucket. I just forgot to film it. And all I did was spray paint the outside, and then I flipped it over and spray painted the inside. Now, while that was all drying outside, I did come in and kind of start disassembling, is that the right word? My wind chime welcome flower thingy here. And all I'm going to do is literally just cut all those chains off of it. I'm going to be using the individual pieces though. Once I had everything separated, I then took my chain out of the packaging, and I'm actually going to be just using 2 of these chains. So I hope I did this on camera. Okay, I did. And first, go ahead and just kind of separate this hook at the top. That way you can pull those individual chains off. And then once you do that, you're going to take one end of your chain and the end that does not have the clips on it. And literally, we're just going to start kind of separating those. Once you have it separated, you can just feed it through the hole that is on the welcome sign where the previous chain was that was holding the flower. I just kind of used my lineman pliers here and just kind of crimped it all together. Now, you've got these little holes on the flower. You can see I already trimmed one off because we're actually not going to be hanging the flower on the chain. And I just don't want to see those random holes there. Now, for the flower, because we are going to stick it on the pot, I need to put something in this kind of hole that's on the back of it because the flower has that indentation. So I'm going to use my micro mini miter saw here. And all I'm going to do is literally just kind of line this up in the little mini vise here and just chop it. This is so much easier than using a hand saw or, a butter knife or whatever you may want to use. Now, you can see it, this just buzzes right through there. If you want one of these, I have links below to a couple different variations of this saw that you can find. Now I'm just going to glue my block right on the back of the flower and set that aside. Once that is dry, though, I did want to kind of embellish the flower a little bit. So I took some green paint and just kind of started adding into the floral petals and to the center of my flower. Once everything was dried, then it was time to go ahead and attach the chain. You may remember that I told you to leave the larger hooks that come on that Dollar Tree chain at the end, and that's because you're going to be using those hooks to secure that champagne bucket, or now our terracotta pot, to the actual handles. And then for the flower, I'm just going to add some hot glue and stick it to the side of my terracotta pot and literally just hold that into place until it dries. And then it's time to add a plant. I took it in my bathroom and because it's a little cold outside for Henry. That's my plant's name. And I love the way this looks. I think it's super whimsy. I think it's super cool. I don't think anybody would really know that this was a plastic pot unless they touched it. I would probably not keep Henry in here long term. Henry will get a little heavy after a little while, but you could certainly add a faux plant or maybe even a smaller version of your own Henry. Dupe is from Anthropologie. I saw this plant stand and was pretty obsessed and wanted to make my own version. So I took my Dollar Tree tomato cage and also a plastic bucket. This was actually left over from an Easter haul, and decided to make a plant stand with them. So the first thing I did was trim off these edges. You'll notice on your tomato cage that there's one side that is kind of rounded and it almost looks like feet. And then there's another end that is squared off. So you're going to actually cut the squared off ends of your tips off here. And then what you're going to just simply start to do is remove the kind of wire circles that are on there. And then once you've done that, go ahead and start to flatten out that end that you clipped off with your wire cutters. And I flattened it about, I would say about 2 inches, maybe 1.5 inches. And what you're going to do is you're going to slightly bend this at a curve, but you want to be very, very careful with this because these will snap. They are very thin metal, and you don't want to mess up one of your legs. And then when you get done, they all should be about like this. So they should kind of be a similar angle, I guess is what I'm trying to say. And then the next thing you're going to do is you can see where I used a red Sharpie and just kind of marked the bucket spot. And all I'm doing is taking my janky tube of E6000 and just making a return appearance. And I'm putting some glue on there. That way I can kind of make sure, one, that this is going to stay, because this is going to go out on my front porch. And regular glue will actually melt in the heat. So we don't want that with summer coming. So again, I added some hot glue to that because it does help speed up that process of that E6000 drying. And then I literally just kind of lined it up with that little mark that I made and pushed it up against the side of the bucket, holding it until it was pretty firm in place, really about until I would say that hot glue started to dry. And then I grabbed that piece of duct tape that you can see kind of hanging there from the top of the bucket and used that to help kind of hold everything in place. That way it could dry and set up overnight. I wanted to make sure that this was good and solid. So I just put that tape up above where all that glue was. That way the tape wouldn't glue to the bucket. And then just set it aside. And, you can see I kind of repeated it on the 3 sides of the bucket. Then the next part was to go ahead and put some decorative trim along the bottom of the bucket. This is going to also help reinforce those legs and keep those legs sturdy. So I took some nautical rope. I unfortunately just have some scraps. So I had one piece of regular nautical rope, and it was enough to go completely around the bucket. So I went ahead and I did that first. And then I decided that I would use some of my nautical rope scraps or some of my pieces. So I've got these pieces, you know how when you separate a piece of nautical rope and it kind of gives you 3 little medium-sized ropes? That's what I have here. And then again, I can go around the bucket about 3 or 4 times, I would say. And then the last thing I thought that I might do, just to add a little bit of a different kind of look to it, is I actually have some Dollar Tree twine. So I thought between the thicker nautical rope and then this rope, and then also the twine, that would give it a nice look once everything was wrapped. And so this is kind of what it looks like. I am going to be spray painting over this. I would recommend that you burn your threads off of your rope before you spray paint. I didn't do that, and so it looks a little wonky. And then go ahead and chop these things off with your clippers. I just used my pink shears from Dollar Tree. Now, once you've got the glue rope already done, you can go ahead and remove your duct tape and get this ready for painting, because between the E6000 and hot glue and now the rope and the twine that's all been glued on top of this, this is going to be pretty sturdy. The next thing that I did is kind of stand it up to make sure it was balanced, and you can kind of see how it's going to look. I think it's really cute already, and of course she needs a paint job, so we're going to take her outside, give her a little Botox, give her a little freshening up, and it'll look great when it's done. So I took it outside, I spray painted it bright orange because I wanted it to go really well with my front porch and everything that's out on my front porch now. She took a lot of work, let me tell you. This was probably about 4 coats of orange paint. That plastic bucket pattern was showing through really, really easy, and that was on the outside and the inside of this bucket. So I just kind of took my time with it. I let it dry all day long. It was a beautiful sunny day, so I didn't have to worry about weather. And I literally just put a nice coat on, sprayed the legs, worked my way around the bucket, and then when that dried, I would flip it over, do the inside, etc. All right, so this is what it looks like. How adorable is this? It goes perfectly with my rug that you can see there in the background. It holds my plant really nicely. This is just a plastic pot inside of here. And again, I am so happy with this little plant stand. The next time I can go to a Dollar Tree, I'm going to grab more of these tomato cages and make so many more of these. All right, guys, the next dupe is this Saturn bowl that I fell in love with for $80 at Anthropologie. And, of course, there was no way I was going to pay $80 for it, so I decided to make my own. I grabbed a garden bowl from Dollar Tree that I had in my stash, and then these are the tomato cage rings that were left over from the previous project. So I am going to use these guys to make my Saturn bowl from Anthropologie. And I think I can do it pretty easily. So the next thing I did was take my glue gun and just drill or burn the holes in the side of the bowl. I did 3 holes going down and then 3 holes on the opposite side. So hopefully that makes sense. When you see me put the rods in, you'll understand. And then this was just starting to put the rods in. I put them in and then also glued them in on both sides of the bowl. It looks a little thick and goopy, but it's okay because once you paint them, it actually looks really good and it looks like welded metal, depending, of course, on what kind of paint that you're using. But again, it was pretty easy to do and wasn't a bad time at all. So again, just kind of burning those holes in there and then going back through and touching it up with the glue and making sure each level was set before you moved on. And then this is what it looks like before it's been painted. Again, I think this is a pretty good copy. So I went ahead and wanted to put feet on mine. I didn't have the patience for the kind of longer stick legs that one had, so I just glued these wood beads on the bottom. And then I took it outside and spray painted it with some bronze hammered paint, and I love this. I really, really love this. I saved myself $80, and this was basically like $2 to make, minus, of course, the succulents and the rocks that are already in there. All right, guys, and then the very last project is from Pier 1. I saw this gold mirror and loved it. I took a wire ring that I had left over from an old project. This is also from a tomato cage. And I just kind of figured out that I could string some of these gorgeous beads on it. I had a Dollar Tree mirror and I had the paper plate, which added a kind of a cool texture. These metallic beads are from Dollar Tree as well. And they're something that I saw at Crafter Square right before COVID-19, so I grabbed some. The first thing I did was take my paper plate and just kind of flatten it out a little bit more. The center mirror is not a perfect fit within here, so kind of flattening out the plate a little bit helped it. And then I took my mirror, and this is kind of where you'll see like a big bonehead move here. I glued the mirror and everything down to the paper plate, and then kind of was like, oh yeah, I probably need to be able to remove that mirror because I have to paint all of this. So that was a little bit of an oopsie on my end. I ended up grabbing more glue and then I figured it out. So I just took the frame off and then just kind of carefully removed this mirror from here. It's not horrible to remove this, so luckily that came off without breaking. And then I took everything outside to spray paint it. And I purposely did not glue the frame down because then I would have to pry it off when I had to put the mirror back in there. While the paint was drying, I went ahead and strung the silver beads. I didn't have enough glue or enough gold paint to be able to do this. So I decided to just go with this silver metallic instead. So my version of this mirror is going to be silver. And I just strung these beads on this wire, and it was really easy to do. I bent the end of one of the wires, that way the beads would stay on there. And then you'll see kind of as I was working my way towards the end of this, I just put a dab of hot glue on the end of that just to hold all of those beads on there. And now you can kind of see how it's going to almost go around the framed mirror. Now that center piece of that wire that's holding that frame together, and that did hold that wire together, I ended up cutting that off. And here I just put a little bit more glue because I was afraid that these things were going to fly off and go across the room. And then I figured out that I could just cut the tip of that wire off where that clamp is, and it would be totally fine. Now this is what everything looks like after it's been spray painted. I love this silver metallic spray paint. This is actually from Ace Hardware, and it's again a pretty cool paint, and I use it in a lot of stuff. So this is the one that I grabbed, and it's super cool. So now it was time to go ahead and just glue my mirror back to the cardboard frame that I had hot glued down before. So I tried to make sure that this was pretty centered, and you'll see it's a little off-centered, but I made it work. So again, I put a generous helping of hot glue down in the base here, which is probably why I couldn't move the mirror afterwards. And then I just glued everything back down. And then for the beaded kind of necklace, we'll call it, I just worked my way around with some hot glue. And this is what it looks like as well. I love this mirror. This is kind of the silver version. The one from Pier 1 is gold, but again, I think it's a perfect complement. I'm going to be using a package of these foam stars that I picked up at Pop Shelf. You can usually find these also at Dollar General and something similar at Dollar Tree. You're only going to need 2 of them, and you want to do 2 that are the same size. I also grabbed one of these over-the-door coat hangers in black. If you can't find one in black, you could certainly spray paint it black, but this one's going to work out perfectly. So the first thing I did was take my stars out, and I grabbed 2 that were the exact same size. These are kind of the medium out of the 3 different sizes that are in this bag, so those are the ones I am going to use for this DIY. Because these stars are kind of 3-dimensional, I do want to have a nice flat surface for these to be able to glue to that coat hanger. So I'm just going to take a little saw here that I grabbed from my toolbox. I almost said my tool belt. And I'm just going to shave off the side of the star here just a little bit, just so I have a nice flat surface for this to stick to. The next thing I'm going to do is take some Mod Podge and I'm going to pour it in my tray here. And I am going to paint both sides of these styrofoam stars with the Mod Podge. Sometimes paint will break down styrofoam. I know for sure spray paint will. And with this one, I'm going to be using a combination of some acrylic paint. I'm going to be using some antiquing wax and some chalk paint. So I want to make sure that these stars are not going to fall apart. I said fall apart. Isn't that hilarious? So after I've given both of my stars 2 coats of Mod Podge, then it is time to start working on the first part of the paint. Then I'm going to use my Craft Smart acrylic paint, and I'm going to give each one of my stars 2 coats of paint on both sides. Now, once the paint had dried on those stars, I loved the way they looked, but it was time to start giving them kind of a bronzy wood finish. So I'm going to take some antiquing wax and this chip brush, and admittedly, I did go a little heavy on this very first star, but I was able to kind of correct it. I would probably do more of a dry brush technique, I would think, than doing something quite as heavy as this. Typically with antiquing wax, I will go very, very heavy when I use this, but with this project, a lighter hand would have definitely done better. Now, as you can see, as I'm using that chipper brush, it is kind of pulling and putting some texture on that star, which I really, really like. Now, this is kind of how I would have preferred, I think, to start off that first star. And as you can see, it almost gives it a wood grain kind of a look. And obviously the styrofoam has some texture in it as well. And all I'm going to do is just continue to build up my layers of paint using the antiquing wax, and then going in with some black chalk paint, and then adding some white back into it, and then just literally building upon my layers and layers and layers until I have the color that I like. After everything dried, then I took my hot glue gun out and I added a generous amount of hot glue right to the top of my over-the-door coat rack. I took my styrofoam stars and that flat area that I had carved out earlier and just glued those down directly on top of that metal like so. When everything dried, I had a fantastic over-the-door coat rack that I loved so much that had a very cool modern industrial look. The next thing I'm going to be doing is making a wood and gemstone garland with a rope tassel on the end of it. I found these citrine beads that are actually rough cut, raw, genuine citrine beads. They look like this. They come on a strand kind of like this on Amazon, and I loved these so much. And I went ahead and just cut the beads that you see on my mat there off of this strand. And again, super fun. My brown beads that you see here, they're a dark Kona color, and these are actually from Michael's. I have 4 different sizes here. And then this is just a piece of twine that I had that was also from Michael's. You could certainly use any kind of twine or thread or anything that you have. I took some of the Dollar Tree black nylon rope and just kind of created a tassel by wrapping this around my pencil, kind of like you see here, and then just tying it off. And I loved the way that this looked. It was pretty cool for me to be able just to keep everything in place. And then I'll show you a little trick that I learned here. So I'm going to take, and unfortunately I'm doing it off camera there, but I took a little bit of glue. I put it on the end of my pencil here, and then I'm going to take my twine or my thread here, and I am going to glue it to that pencil kind of like so. It's on low temperature, so don't worry, I didn't burn my hands, even though my hands are really, really dirty from doing painting earlier. And then I'm going to pull my pencil through, and look at that. My tassel is threaded. All I have to do is just cut this now off of the end of the pencil, and I've got that thread all ready to go. Now I did take my twine and I knotted it together at the top of that tassel, and then I took my 2 ends and just cut them off there. Now I'm going to pick a citrine bead that already has those holes threaded through it, and I'm going to take my twine and just thread it through, bringing that citrine bead really, really close to the top of that tassel. But to help kind of thread these along, I am going to add some hot glue on the end of my thread, and that will help this beading or this threading process of my citrine. As you can see with my dirty fingers from painting earlier, it does go through, and then I can pull that all the way down to the end there and just thread my citrine bead kind of like so. So after I double threaded that one citrine bead, then I separated my strings again, and so I had two different threads. Hopefully that's making sense. I think it'll make sense once you see how everything starts to come together. Now I'm going to pick the right stone and figure out kind of what two are about the same size, and then I'm going to thread one stone through on one side of the thread. And then I'm going to take the other stone and do it with the other side of the thread. That way, those three stones are all kind of joined together. And you'll see what I'm talking about here in just a minute once everything is done. Also, just a little tip for you, whenever you're using anything, any kind of threading like this, it always helps to put a little bit of tape, or in my case, I'm using actually a little bit of hot glue on the ends of your thread, and then it will make threading a lot easier. So now that I've got those three stones, I think you can kind of see where I'm going here. And now I'm just going to create a pattern as I'm starting to thread my stones and my wood beads onto each one of my pieces here. And then when I had the desired length, I went ahead and just tied everything in a double knot at the end of my strand, joining everything together to create this amazing looking garland. I really love the way this wood and gemstone garland looks. I absolutely love how I doubled it up here and just put it around the neck of my vase. Another thing you can do with it is simply just use it to accent your tray. This would be fantastic on a tiered tray or on a coffee table tray like I have styled here. Again, super versatile, very, very earthy, and I love the way this looks. And for my next project, I'm going to be using some of these party favor blocks that you can find in the birthday party section at your local Dollar Tree. I also grabbed a package of these mini kind of appetizer plates. There's 12 of them to a package. You can use any of the extras for paint. So the first thing we did was take all of our party blocks. I took all three packages and I'm going to open them up and start building my blocks or my towers with them. To do that, all I'm going to do is start gluing them together. You could certainly glue these in the color blocks if you wanted to. It doesn't really matter because you're going to end up spray painting them. So I did one tower that was the tallest, and then I did a medium-sized tower, and then I did a small tower. And the great thing about these blocks is that they do open. That's, I guess, the party favor part of them, but the bad part of that for this project is that you will have to glue them shut as well. So go ahead and add some glue to the front where the kind of snaps are, and then to the tops to glue them into your individual stacks. And once you have everything glued and stacked on top of each other, it is time to add your little appetizer plates to the top. Once the glue dried, I took everything outside and gave it 2 coats of my black spray paint. I'm actually using a flat black versus a gloss or even a matte finish. This is totally your own preference, whichever you think is best. You could even spray paint these a lighter color or even a very cool metallic color, and I think they would be equally amazing. Once everything was dried, I took them inside and added some tea light candles, and this is what they look like. I love the way these look. They are definitely a focal point on my coffee table tray, and they give a very cool industrial modern vibe that I'm really, really into lately. And for my last project, we're going to be using 4 of these 5x7 Dollar Tree frames. I've already taken the glass out of them because that's actually what we're going to be using. You can put the frame part aside and save that. Also, I have these 5-inch wood squares, and that's important. You want to get a wood square that's going to be the same size as your glass, kind of like you see here. So go ahead and make sure whatever size wood that you're going to be using is the same size as the glass from the frames. that you'll be using. I grabbed these wood slices from, or these wood pieces from Amazon, and I will link them in the description box below. I'm going to take a ruler here and I'm just going to draw a line, and then I'm going to take an X-Acto knife, or this is the Dollar Tree version of that, and I'm just going to score my wood here 3 or 4 times with this X-Acto knife. If you have something that's a little heavy duty-er, then that would probably be better than what I was using here. I just went nice and slow. And again, I think I did this 3 or 4 times, kind of right along that line that I had just drawn. I probably could have even just kept the ruler there and just gone back and forth against that edge with that. But I just took my time. And then if you bend this, it will pop, as you will see here. And you may have to take some scissors and just kind of trim it up a little bit. I did that and it was perfectly fine. I did this to 4 pieces of wood, and I used the one that I'm trimming up here actually as my template. That way I had 4 pieces that exactly matched each other. So hopefully that makes sense. The next thing I'm going to do is take my 4 pieces of wood and rub them down with some antiquing wax. I'm using this chip brush, and I'm just going to give everything a good coating on both sides. And then I am going to take my rag and just wipe away any of the excess, making sure that I have 4 pieces that are beautifully stained with my antiquing wax. The next thing I'm going to do is take my 2 pieces of wood and I am going to glue them onto my glass. So for the first 2 pieces, I'm actually going to glue them together kind of like so. That way I have 2 pieces of glass with 2 pieces of wood going in the same direction. And then I am going to do the same with the bottom 2 pieces of glass, but they're going to go in the opposite direction, as you see here. So hopefully that is making sense. That way, when I glue everything together, all of my pieces are going to match up. Once everything was dry, it was time to start assembling my box. The first thing I'm going to do is add some hot glue onto the glass and to the wood that is kind of overlapping there just a little bit. And then I'm going to join those corners together that match up. Remember, I have a high and a low side to each one of my pieces of glass. So that is kind of what I'm joining together. That way it kind of creates this really cool zigzag pattern. So again, matching up that high side with the other high side, making sure that everything is flush and as tight as possible, and then working my way around until I have the very last part together. Now, this is still not very sturdy, so you definitely want to reinforce this. Go ahead and add your glue. Add everything together, hold it in place until it does glue together, and then you want to go ahead and flip this upside down. Do this very, very carefully. Once you've done that, you can then add a base. I chose not to paint my base. This is totally up to you. If you want to paint this piece, then by all means, please do. It is not going to be seen. You're going to cover it up with a lot of stuff. And again, totally your call. Once everything was dry, then I added in some of these Dollar Tree wood birch pieces. I also added in some moss and some Dollar Tree rocks and some succulents to create the perfect tabletop succulent garden. I am so happy with the way this looks on my coffee table. This is something that I can keep out all year round. I also think that this would look fantastic on the mantle or even on a bookshelf. You're going to be doing a dupe of this Kirkland's pen holder. I saw this and immediately loved it, but did not love that $90 price point. I knew that I could easily recreate it with 4 of these Dollar Tree Crafter Square pen holders. If you're not able to find these, you could certainly use these small drawers. What I would do is just kind of flip them upside down, remove that drawer, and then you'll see they're just a little bit shorter, but they would work also just as well. Now, the great thing about Dollar Tree, of course, is the price point, but sometimes you can get some things that aren't exactly the same size, especially with something like this that you're trying to create. So go ahead and just kind of play around with it and then figure out which ones you're going to use. And then I'm going to take these 2 outside and spray paint them, and then I'm going to have 2 of them that I'm going to be using my antiquing wax on. And what I'm doing is just applying it using one of those makeup sponges, and I'm going with the grain of the wood. That's really really important because these Crafter Square blocks are, they've got a really cool kind of wood grain to them, honestly. And if you do it with the grain, you'll notice that once you start wiping that excess antiquing wax off of there with the grain as well, you can see how those beautiful lines and those colors really start to develop. And I love the way this looks. I did go ahead and paint the inside of mine as well because I wanted them to have a high-end look. Now, I didn't film me spray painting the ones black, but as you can see, they're spray painted black. And now we're going to start gluing together our boxes. Now, to mimic the Kirkland's dupe, I'm going to be doing mine in a square. However, if you wanted to make these rectangular, that is really, really up to you. Now, the other tip that I will give you is that when you are dealing with these boxes that may not always be the perfect size or the exact same size, flip them upside down. And when you do that, you're going to make sure that you have a nice flat kind of top surface, if you will. The cool thing about these is that you can always add little felt tips or pads or something to the bottom of this to make this more even. I would rather have a very high-end look and have everything nice and flat at the top. I'm going to add some Surebonder wood glue to these and just glue the first two pieces together like so. And then I'm going to kind of flip that to the back and move it out of my way so I can add some more of this Surebonder wood glue to my box here, and then just hold these together and make sure that everything is glued together nice and tight. And then once that's all set, then I'm going to take my foursome and we're going to glue those together as well. Once again, just kind of lining them up, making sure that we're nice and flat, adding a generous helping of my wood glue from Surebonder and gluing these together to make sure that they have the perfect hold so I can use this as a desk accessory. And then once everything is dry, flip it over and you've got a very high-end look that saved you about $86. And it is super, super cool. I love the way this looks. It holds a lot of different pens and pencils and markers and such, and it is the perfect addition to my desk. And for my next project, we're going to be using 4 of these signs that I picked up from Kroger, believe it or not. Kroger is my local grocery store, and these are wood. These are like solid wood. And I want to say I paid less than $1, or maybe they were $2 each. That's not less than $1, but you know what I mean. And then I had these Amazon letters that I grabbed. They are 5-inch letters, and I will link these below. I had enough to spell out the word kitchen, and I thought that this would be a cool gift for a friend of mine. So the first thing I did was just glue my blocks together end to end. And literally all I'm doing is gluing those together with my Surebonder wood glue. And then I'm going to add some stir sticks that I just kind of cut down. And it's really just to give it some additional stability. There's not much else to that. Once everything dried, I flipped it over on its side, and it looks something like this. For my letters, obviously, I have some here that were used from a previous project, but it's fine. I'm going to be spray painting all of this anyway. I'm making sure that everything is lining up properly. And by the way, those 4 blocks equals about 30 inches in total length. So if you wanted to recreate this, you easily could by just having a piece of board or something that was at least 30 inches. So I started with the K on the one end, and then I'm going to start with my N on the end of my sign. And I'm doing that just so I make sure that I have proper spacing. And then as you can see here, I'm going to start kind of working with the C in the middle and then gluing the letters kind of out from the C then. That way I have a pretty even, or at least equally even spaced. I took everything outside and I'm spray painting it now just with a flat black. I'm going to make this kind of very modern looking, if you will. And then once everything has dried, I took it inside. Now, this is displayed on my bar. It's actually too big for my kitchen, and my kitchen's a little messy, to be honest. But I wanted you to be able to see how this looks before I pass it on to a friend of mine. I do love the way this looks. I think that you could very easily hang this on the wall as well, and maybe add some hooks on the bottom of it. I think it'd be great for hanging aprons or maybe even some lightweight utensils. I think that there's a lot of versatility with it, and it's just super cool. Now, my next project is actually going to be a Recycle. I picked up these vases at a thrift store. They were $1.25 each, and I really did love the shape of them. The color wasn't exactly within the color scheme of my house, or at least what I'm kind of going for. So the first thing I'm going to do is just take a low grit sandpaper, and I'm just going to kind of go over the vases a little bit. This is really just to help remove any of the, dust or grime from them sitting around, and then also kind of to help remove some of that shiny coating that is sometimes on these. I'm going to be spray painting these with this Rust-Oleum metallic oil rubbed bronze spray paint that I really love so much. And literally, I'm not doing anything fancy. I'm not taping them off. I'm not doing any kind of thing like that because I just want these to look like two bronze vases. And as you can see, I'm just going over with a coat of spray paint. I literally only had to do one coat of spray paint, and I love the way that these look. This is what they look like inside on the bookshelf in my home. And again, super happy with the way these look. I think that they're super elegant looking and just very cool. And for my last DIY, I'm going to be creating one of those weighted poster frames at the top and at the bottom of this map. This is a cloth map that I purchased on Amazon. It was around $15. It's huge, and I really like the way it looks in my guest bedroom, but I needed to kind of jazz it up a little bit. So I went to my local hardware store and I bought some trim pieces. These are about 100 inches long, and I cut both of them down to 60 inches, which is the width of that map. I used this dark Kona wood stain, trying to film with one hand, and this is what the wood boards looked like when they were done. I thought they were absolutely gorgeous. And then I took this inside and started to assemble the map on the frame. And then to attach those boards, I'm just going to use my Sure Bonder staple gun here. All I'm going to do is literally just take this map and use that blue kind of hem mark as my guide. And I'm going to be stapling this down directly to the trim. My staples are short enough that it's not going to be an issue with my piece of wood here. So just make sure that you don't have any super long staples. And then once I did the top, I just flipped this over and I'm going to repeat the process on the bottom. Now the bottom, I am going to give it a little bit more room on the board itself. I'm stapling more of the fabric to that board because it is weighted, and if you don't do that, it's not going to hang properly. So I'm also taking now some nautical rope. I flipped it back over and went back to the top, by the way. And I'm just going to add a knot on the end of that nautical rope. And then I'm just going to staple this down on the end of the board, kind of like so. And then what I am going to do is repeat the process on the other end of it. And for the rope length itself, you're only going to use about the same length of the entire width of the rod. So it's about 60 inches. And you just don't want a big, long piece of rope here. The idea of this is that the hanging piece or the rope that it's hanging from is not a very long rope. You'll see what I mean once it's hanging on the wall. And when it's all done, this is what it looks like hanging on the wall in my office/guest bedroom. I really love the way that this looks. I think it looks super high-end and very cool. And it definitely elevated that typical tapestry that was just kind of thumbtacked onto the wall. I do have a steamer coming, by the way, so if you're thinking, oh my god, it's so wrinkled, just know that I do have that steamer coming from Amazon, and I should have it in a couple days. It should be these trays from West Elm. The small tray is $56, and the large tray is $70. My version, I'm going to grab one of these Dollar Tree pizza pans as well as a dinner plate. For the plate, you can really grab any style that you want. Just make sure that it is smaller than your pizza pan. I took my plate and my pizza pan outside and just gave it a nice coating of my bright gold paint. This is a spray paint by Rust-Oleum that you can pick up at usually any hardware store. What I love about this too is that the hold is incredible, and I did do just one coat on each side for this. When everything dried, I took it inside and stacked them just like you saw in the West Elm example. I put a simple floral vase and a candle next to it, and I think it's a super modern, very cool tray. Another cool thing that you can do with these trays is because you're not going to glue them together, you can use one, for example, as a bar tray. I love the way that pizza pan really gets elevated with that gold paint. Another option is to use them as a charger. You can see here that I'm using a smaller salad plate and created the perfect little coffee table dinner. Next dupe is going to be this decorative chain from CB2. This retails for $129, and I'm going to make mine for $1 using a Halloween decorative chain from Dollar Tree. All you're going to do is take this chain outside and literally give it a couple coats of spray paint. I'm using a metallic brass spray paint. I loved the way that this looked, and it dries really, really easily on this chain. You're going to spray one side down really well, like I'm doing here. After it dries, you'll flip it over. You'll spray paint the other side. If you have the option of being able to hang this from a tree or a clothesline, that would probably be better and you won't waste quite as much paint as I'm doing here. Once my decorative chain was dry, I took it inside and just simply styled it on a tray that sits on my coffee table. What's great about this chain is that it is super versatile. You could drape it over a stack of books, kind of like I have here, or you could just put it in a beautiful glass vase or bowl, and it creates a very cool decorative accent all by itself. And my next dupe is this West Elm decorative bowl that retails for $118. I love this, but I'm going to make it for $2 using a glass bowl and a glass from Dollar Tree. I'm also going to be using some super glue adhesive. I also grabbed this when I was at Dollar Tree. The great thing about this super glue is that it does hold instantly. I love how quickly it works and the bond. It makes being able to paint the projects and get the projects done in a decent amount of time so much easier. Whenever I find these larger tubes of this super glue at Dollar Tree, I always try and grab them. After everything is dried, I took it outside and I spray painted it navy blue. I love the way that this paint went on the glass. I also afterwards took a sponge brush and just wiped away some of my drip marks, and it created this really cool texture on it, and I love the way this looks. It's so simple. It's very elegant. It's a statement piece on my mantle. I saved a lot of money. And what's super cool about this, again, it's very versatile. You could take a decorative chain and have it kind of spilling out of the bowl very easily. You could also put a succulent or candles in this. Again, super, super versatile. And for my last dupe from Pottery Barn, I'm going to be recreating these frames that retail for $49.50. For mine, I'm going to be using 2 leftover embroidery hoops. These are the outer hoops. I'm also going to be using some decorative chain from Dollar Tree. And then I decided at the last minute not to use this canvas. I think instead I'm just going to use regular photographs. And then I also had 3 of these round magnets from Dollar Tree. So the first thing I'm going to do is take my decorative chain and just loop it through the embroidery hoops at the top. All you have to do is unscrew them and then just simply place that chain in the middle and then screw them back together. This part's very, very easy. I then took everything outside and gave it a nice coat of my antique gold spray paint from Rust-Oleum. I love this paint and obviously am using it a whole lot on today's projects. Now, there is one step that I did forget to film, and that is attaching the chain to the back of the magnet. All I did was just take the chain and some super glue and literally just super glued it right to the back of that magnet. And then I did add a little piece of electrical tape over top of it, and that was really just to help kind of speed up that gluing drying process. And I just spray painted over top of it. Now, what I did neglect to do was leave a little bit of the chain at the top to hang this. So I took a little piece of Dollar Tree twine and just created a very simple loop on the back. To add photos to your frame, just simply print off a photo that means something to you, or you could even use some printed photographs that you may already have, and then simply just add it to the center of the frame by adding some hot glue onto each corner, and then you've got a very cool decorative frame set that is saving you a lot of money versus spending $49.50 at Pottery Barn. I think I made mine for about $4 total. Pretty cool, huh? Making a pair of these lanterns for my front steps. I love these, but don't have the $100 to spend on them. I'm going to take some of these Jenga blocks that I received from a very good friend of mine. These are the legitimate Jenga blocks. You could easily recreate this using the Dollar Tree Jenga blocks if you wanted. Also, I grabbed some of these, they call them garden charms. And they're brand new at Dollar Tree, and I am literally just going to use this for the DIY. They're kind of a wood composite, so I think it's going to be actually perfect for this project. The first thing I'm going to do is start gluing together 2 sets of my Jenga blocks. So what I'm going to do is glue 4 sets that are twofers. So hopefully that makes sense. And then I'm going to take 2 of the sets and I'm going to glue the pieces on the end, kind of like you see me doing here. This is sped up. Don't worry, I'm not doing this in like Superman fashion here. And now I'm going to be actually working on the base. And what I'm going to be doing here is gluing 2 together and then another 2 to kind of create this crisscross. Then I'm going to take those 2 kind of U-shaped ones, I guess, that we had before. And I am going to start to set these up. This is going to be the base of our tower. And as I'm gluing this together and putting this together, I'm actually going to put the sides on last. That way they fit. I know that I'm doing this really, really fast, but trust me, it's pretty easy. It's just a matter of gluing the blocks together. And then for the centerpiece there, all I'm going to be doing is taking that garden charm, adding some hot glue on it. I'm also going to add some hot glue directly on the Jenga blocks there, and then I'm just going to glue the medallion down in the center. You could certainly do this after you build the tower if you want. I don't think it really matters either way. It doesn't really get in the way. And now you're going to start building your sides. Now you can build this as tall as you want to, really. Obviously, you know, you want to make sure that it's not going to tumble over, even though it is Jenga blocks. But I built mine up pretty high, and I did actually build 2 of these. Now, once you get to the top, or at least to the height that you want, then you're going to create 4 more twofers. And then you're going to create 2 of the U-shapes once again. And you're doing this because you're going to top off the lantern with a very similar structure that you've got on the bottom, with the exception of the crisscross. You don't really need the crisscross on the top of this. So again, hopefully that is making sense to you. And then as you can see, we're just going to glue it on top here, and it's going to mimic exactly what you see with the taller one. After the glue dried, I took everything outside and I gave it a nice coating of spray paint. I used this black spray paint and I gave everything 2 coats and let it dry really well. Once that dried, I took it inside and then filled my glass vases. These vases may look familiar because I am actually recycling from a previous project. I added some Dollar Tree rocks and some water into each one of the vases. I put a taller vase in the taller lantern and a shorter vase in the shorter lantern. And I added these floating candles that I also grabbed from Dollar Tree. And then I very carefully took these outside and put them on the front steps. And this is what they look like. I absolutely love these so much. I think that they are gorgeous. They fit so good with the style of my front porch, and they look amazing on my front steps. Now I just have to take them inside because it's going to be like 30 degrees. And for my next Kirkland's dupe, I'm going to be making this planter that retails for $14.99. I'm going to take some assorted succulents from Dollar Tree. I'm also going to take one of these wooden drawers and some floral foam. First thing you're going to do is remove the drawer. You're not going to need that. And then you're going to cut down your floral foam to fit inside of your box. I then took some of my antiquing wax and used my small brush and just worked my way around the box itself. I'm not going to do the inside of the box, but I am going to do the outside and the bottom. This is totally your call. If you wanted to do the inside, please feel free to go ahead and do that, of course. And for the antiquing wax, anytime that I do it, I always apply it fairly heavy. I work my way around, and then I take a cloth and wipe it all around. Now, all I'm going to do here is just add those lines to give this a palette look. And I'm using my Arteza pen here and a ruler. And I'm literally just going to line this up all the way around the box itself, just making sure that those lines are somewhat straight. I'm not really worried about if they even connect, to be honest. And then I am going to also darken up the sides. And then the last thing I did was go through and just add some dots to give it a nailed effect. I added the succulents, and this is what it looks like. I absolutely love this so much. And my next project was inspired by these terracotta bud vases that were almost $60, but they were at least on sale. I took these two Dollar Tree vases that I picked up the last time I was there, and also some terracotta spray paint from my local hardware store. The only thing about this terracotta spray paint is that it does not cling to glazed ceramic. And since those vases do have a glaze on them, I am going to add 2 coats of Mod Podge, and I'm going to let that dry. Once everything is dry, I'm going to take it outside and spray paint it with my terracotta spray paint. I gave everything 2 coats of the terracotta spray paint and let that dry really well. And then it was really done. It was that simple. I took them inside, and this is what it looks like when they're all done. I added some floral stems, and again, love this and think that they look absolutely amazing on that tray. And my next dupe is going to be these 3 succulent mini planters. They retail for $34.99. So instead, I made my own version. I grabbed 3 of these succulent planters from Dollar Tree and some twine that I had on hand. I just simply removed the succulent stems from each one of those little mini pots. I grabbed my glue gun and the twine and just started working the twine and the glue all the way around those pots themselves. And literally just started working my way around. And then at some point you'll get to where you can just freely wrap the rope. You need very, very little glue. I use a lot of glue kind of at the very beginning of wrapping it. And then as I'm wrapping it closer to the top, I start adding a little bit more glue. But you're literally just going to repeat this until you have 3 gorgeous little succulent planters just like this that I was able to make for $4. I absolutely love these. That simple addition of twine really, really elevates these. The next thing I'm going to be doing is making a wood and gemstone garland with a rope tassel on the end of it. I found these citrine beads that are actually rough cut, raw, genuine citrine beads. They look like this. They come on a strand kind of like this on Amazon, and I loved these so much. And I went ahead and just cut the beads that you see on my mat there off of this strand. And again, super fun. My brown beads that you see here, they're a dark Kona color, and these are actually from Michaels. I have 4 different sizes here. And then this is just a piece of twine that I had that was also from Michaels. You could certainly use any kind of twine or thread or anything that you have. I took some of the Dollar Tree black nylon rope and just kind of created a tassel by wrapping this around my pencil, kind of like you see here, and then just tying it off. And I loved the way that this looked. It was pretty cool for me to be able just to keep everything in place. And then I'll show you a little trick that I learned here. So I'm going to take, and unfortunately I'm doing it off camera there, but I took a little bit of glue. I put it on the end of my pencil here, and then I'm going to take my twine or my thread here, and I am going to glue it to that pencil kind of like so. It's on low temperature, so don't worry, I didn't burn my hands, even though my hands are really, really dirty from doing painting earlier. And then I'm going to pull my pencil through, and look at that. My tassel is threaded. All I have to do is just cut this now off of the end of the pencil, and I've got that thread all ready to go. Now I did take my twine and I knotted it together at the top of that tassel, and then I took my two ends and just cut them off now. Now I'm going to pick a citrine bead that already has those holes threaded through it, and I'm going to take my twine and just thread it through, bringing that citrine bead really, really close to the top of that tassel. But to help kind of thread these along, I am going to add some hot glue on the end of my thread, and that will help this beading or this threading process of my citrine. As you can see with my dirty fingers from painting earlier, it does go through, and then I can pull that all the way down to the end there and just thread my citrine bead kind of like so. So after I double threaded that one citrine bead, then I separated my strings again, and so I had two different threads. Hopefully that's making sense. I think it'll make sense once you see how everything starts to come together. Now I'm going to pick the right stone and figure out kind of what two are about the same size, and then I'm going to thread one stone through on one side of the thread. And then I'm going to take the other stone and do it with the other side of the thread. That way, those three stones are all kind of joined together. And you'll see what I'm talking about here in just a minute once everything is done. Also, just a little tip for you, whenever you're using anything, any kind of threading like this, it always helps to put a little bit of tape, or in my case, I'm using actually a little bit of hot glue on the ends of your thread, and then it will make threading a lot easier. So now that I've got those three stones, I think you can kind of see where I'm going here. And now I'm just going to create a pattern as I'm starting to thread my stones and my wood beads onto each one of my pieces here. And then when I had the desired length, I went ahead and just tied everything in a double knot at the end of my strand, joining everything together to create this amazing looking garland. I really love the way this wood and gemstone garland looks. I absolutely love how I doubled it up here and just put it around the neck of my vase. Another thing you can do with it is simply just use it to accent your tray. This would be fantastic on a tiered tray or on a coffee table tray like I have styled here. Again, super versatile, very, very earthy, and I love the way this looks. And for my next project, I'm going to be using some of these party favor blocks that you can find in the birthday party section at your local Dollar Tree. I also grabbed a package of these mini kind of appetizer plates. There's 12 of them to a package. You can use any of the extras for paint. So the first thing we did was take all of our party blocks. I took all three packages and I'm going to open them up and start building my blocks or my towers with them. To do that, all I'm going to do is start gluing them together. You could certainly glue these in the color blocks if you wanted to. It doesn't really matter because you're going to end up spray painting them. So I did one tower that was the tallest, and then I did a medium-sized tower, and then I did a small tower. And the great thing about these blocks is that they do open. That's, I guess, the party favor part of them, but the bad part of that for this project is that you will have to glue them shut as well. So go ahead and add some glue to the front where the kind of snaps are, and then to the tops to glue them into your individual stacks. And once you have everything glued and stacked on top of each other, it is time to add your little appetizer plates to the top. Once the glue dried, I took everything outside and gave it 2 coats of my black spray paint. I'm actually using a flat black versus a gloss or even a matte finish. This is totally your own preference, whichever you think is best. You could even spray paint these a lighter color or even a very cool metallic color, and I think they would be equally amazing. Once everything was dried, I took them inside and added some tea light candles, and this is what they look like. I love the way these look. They are definitely a focal point on my coffee table tray, and they give a very cool industrial modern vibe that I'm really, really into lately. And for my last project, we're going to be using 4 of these 5x7 Dollar Tree frames. I've already taken the glass out of them because that's actually what we're going to be using. You can put the frame part aside and save that. Also, I have these 5-inch wood squares, and that's important. You want to get a wood square that's going to be the same size as your glass, kind of like you see here. So go ahead and make sure whatever size wood that you're going to be using is the same size as the glass from the frames that you'll be using. I grabbed these wood slices from, or these wood pieces from Amazon, and I will link them in the description box below. I'm going to take a ruler here and I'm just going to draw a line, and then I'm going to take an X-Acto knife, or this is the Dollar Tree version of that, and I'm just going to score my wood here 3 or 4 times with this X-Acto knife. If you have something that's a little heavy dutier, then that would probably be better than what I was using here. I just went nice and slow. And again, I think I did this 3 or 4 times, kind of right along that line that I had just drawn. I probably could have even just kept the ruler there and just gone back and forth against that edge with that. But I just took my time. And then if you bend this, it will pop, as you will see here. And you may have to take some scissors and just kind of trim it up a little bit. I did that and it was perfectly fine. I did this to 4 pieces of wood, and I used the one that I'm trimming up here actually as my template. That way I had 4 pieces that exactly matched each other. So hopefully that makes sense. The next thing I'm going to do is take my 4 pieces of wood and rub them down with some antiquing wax. I'm using this chip brush, and I'm just going to give everything a good coating on both sides. And then I am going to take my rag and just wipe away any of the excess, making sure that I have 4 pieces that are beautifully stained with my antiquing wax. The next thing I'm going to do is take my 2 pieces of wood and I am going to glue them onto my glass. So for the first 2 pieces, I'm actually going to glue them together kind of like so. That way I have 2 pieces of glass with 2 pieces of wood going in the same direction. And then I am going to do the same with the bottom 2 pieces of glass, but they're going to go in the opposite direction, as you see here. So hopefully that is making sense. That way, when I glue everything together, all of my pieces are going to match up. Once everything was dry, it was time to start assembling my box. The first thing I'm going to do is add some hot glue onto the glass and to the wood that is kind of overlapping there just a little bit. And then I'm going to join those corners together that match up. Remember, I have a high and a low side to each one of my pieces of glass. So that is kind of what I'm joining together. That way it kind of creates this really cool zigzag pattern. So again, matching up that high side with the other high side, making sure that everything is flush and as tight as possible, and then working my way around until I have the very last part together. Now, this is still not very sturdy, so you definitely want to reinforce this. Go ahead and add your glue. Add everything together, hold it in place until it does glue together, and then you want to go ahead and flip this upside down. Do this very, very carefully. Once you've done that, you can then add a base. I chose not to paint my base. This is totally up to you. If you want to paint this piece, then by all means, please do. It is not going to be seen. You're going to cover it up with a lot of stuff. And again, totally your call. Once everything was dry, then I added in some of these Dollar Tree wood birch pieces. I also added in some moss and some Dollar Tree rocks and some succulents to create the perfect tabletop succulent garden. I am so happy with the way this looks on my coffee table. This is something that I can keep out all year round. I also think that this would look fantastic on the mantle or even on a bookshelf. Project, we're going to be making one of these high-end rope trays that you've seen at places like Home Goods and Pottery Barn. For this, I'm going to be taking this bundle of rope that I purchased at a local fabric store. This was $3 for this entire bundle, and as you can see, it is very, very thick. You can easily replicate this tray with some Dollar Tree nautical rope. The first thing I'm going to do is take my rope, and I'm going to figure out how much or how big really I want the tray, And I'm also going to use this piece of cardboard because we're going to help reinforce the bottom of the tray with this. So the first thing I'm going to do is just start to spin my rope on the cardboard. And this is just so I can get kind of a visual effect of what I want my tray to be, or how big I want my tray to be. For this, you're just simply going to start spinning it around and spinning it around until you get it the size that you want. Then just take a ballpoint pen or a marker or something and just start tracing around your rope. That way you know how big to cut your piece of cardboard that you are going to use to reinforce the bottom of that tray. Now that I've got my cardboard cut out, it's time to start assembling or start gluing our rope together. I'm going to be using this Store Bonder glue mat that I have. What's great about this glue mat is that it literally nothing will stick to it. And if you don't have this Store Bonder glue mat, you can definitely get one. I have a link below. But you could also use parchment paper for this. It will work the same way. All you're going to do is take your glue gun and just start working your way around and down the rope and just coiling it up like you see me doing here. And as this is getting larger and larger, you may want to add a little more glue than you started with. Initially, when you kind of do this in the middle, I do put a generous amount of glue there. And then as I work my way around, I don't usually use quite as much. And then when it starts to get to a kind of a larger circle, that's when you see me start adding more and more glue. So hopefully that made sense. When I get to the end or to the size that I like, I am going to cut down my rope, and I'm going to cut it at a little bit of an angle here. And you see that I'm doing that now. And what I'm going to be doing is kind of gluing that flat up against the side of the tray. That way it really makes it look like it's somewhat seamless. Now, not to worry on how that's going to look, because you'll see that we're actually going to be gluing some handles. But first, we need to flip this sucker over and glue our cardboard bottom to our tray. Now, before I glue my cardboard backing on, I am going to go ahead and create some of my handles. What I did was just take some of the rope that I had left over. I wrapped some of this twine down towards the end there, and then I'm giving this little guy a haircut. And I'm literally going to cut this down as close and as tight to the end of that as I can. I wanted to give this just kind of a little bit of color, a little bit of an extra decorative touch, and I'm going to do that on both ends of my two handles that I'm creating for my tray. For the actual backing itself, all I'm going to do is add a generous amount of hot glue onto the back of that rope. As you can see, I'm going nuts with the glue, hot glue palooza here. And of course, I had to stop midway and add some more glue, but that was my own fault. And all I'm doing again is just adding lots and lots and lots of hot glue. And then I'm going to take my cardboard backing and just stick it right down on top and just make sure that that is good and solid and dries really well before flipping it back over to add my handles. And for my handles, we're going to go back to that area where I ended the rope and just glue this straight down, hold that into place until it gets nice and solid. And then we're going to repeat it on the other side as well. So you have two handles on opposite sides of your tray. And this is what it looks like when it's all done. I absolutely love this tray. Depending on how you style it, it could go nautical, it could go very boho, it could be kind of in the middle. I absolutely love this so much. Also, it's important to note that those handles, they're just decorative. This is not meant for a bed and breakfast kind of a tray at all. So just be careful. Give it some love when you're using it. And for my next project, this is a clock that I saw on the Pottery Barn website. I absolutely loved this clock, but it was quite expensive. And I thought the more and more I looked at it that I could definitely recreate this with some product that I already had on hand and a few Dollar Tree items as well. So to try and recreate my version of this clock, I'm going to be using this Dollar Tree love sign. Also, I had a second one of these galvanized metal signs. You may remember this sign from my Cricut video that I did. Also, I had some of these Jenga wood pieces, and I do have a clock kit that I ordered from Amazon. The first thing I'm going to do is paint the center of my love sign, and I'm going to use some acrylic white paint that I have here from Craftsmart, if it will ever come out of the tube. I am running a little low on my paints, so I need to stock up on this one. For this one, I did 3 coats. I know I should have probably painted it darker and then worked in reverse, but I didn't. I went with 3 coats of the white, and it was fine. It was very therapeutic. Once that was done, I then taped it off, and I used some of my masking tape, or my painter's tape, I should say, from Dollar Tree. And I just painted the frame black, just like the one that you saw in the picture. Now my galvanized sign is almost perfect, except for it does have a little bit of a lip here, and I want this to lay as flat as possible on top of my sign. So I'm just going to take some popsicle sticks, and I'm just going to glue them down on either side of the sign itself, and this will enable that sign to lay flat. Those popsicle sticks are about the same thickness as the lip on the sign itself. So once I did that and I let them dry in place, all I did was just flip this over and glue this down right on top of my sign like so. For my clock markers, I'm going to be using these Jenga wood pieces, and I'm actually going to use an antiquing wax. You may remember in the Pottery Barn version, they are using gold numbers. I almost went with the gold, but I love the way that this black and the wood look. It kind of gives it a very cool industrial look, and this is something that I have a lot of in my home. So if it's going to be in my home, I'm going to make it work for me. And once everything dried, I just started to glue it around on the clock itself, or what would be the clock face. All I'm doing is taking each one of those wood blocks and kind of putting them in the place of where your 12 o'clock, 3 o'clock, 6 o'clock, and 9 o'clock markers would be. And then I added this clock mechanism that I purchased on Amazon for $8. I used some double-sided Velcro tape for this to stick it to the clock face. And this is what it looks like when it's hanging on the wall. I love this so much. Super modern, very industrial, and definitely my style. And for my last project, this is a set of bookends that I saw at Z Gallerie. They were $70, and I thought I could easily recreate them. I bought a bag of these 2-inch wooden balls on Amazon, and I just started gluing them together. Literally, I started off working on my catch mat here, and as you can see, I will end up switching over to the Shore Bonder mat. The catch mat is doing exactly what it does. It catches everything. And for this project, I did not need it to catch everything. So I ended up switching over. But what I'm doing is literally gluing these balls together, kind of stacking them almost like you would see cannonballs. That's kind of what this reminded me of. So I started off with 3, and then I started off with 2, and then 1, and then just slowly started kind of building up the tower itself. For the balls, once I had the first set done, then I started on the second set. And again, just starting with the 3 and then gluing 2 and then gluing another one and then building my stacks up until I had 2 stacks that were completely done like this. I really love the way that these looked in silver, so I grabbed some Rust-Oleum hammered silver spray paint and gave the balls 2 coatings of silver paint. Not sure if you guys have counted how many times I have said balls in this part of the project, but I can't help but giggle just a little bit every time I do it. So once my balls were dry, I added a second coat of spray paint, and when everything was done, I took them inside, and this is what they look like. Again, super happy with these. I think that they look incredible on my shelf. I love that pop of silver and how it looks good against that dark wood of my bookcase. I am so happy with these. I love the way they look. Even the glue globs that are there are perfect because they look like these are cannonballs that have all been welded together. I'm super stoked.